Harrison Sterling didn't look like a billionaire the night he walked into the Obsidian. He looked like a man who had run out of air. He arrived earlier than the reservation required, 15 minutes of silence before the world asked anything else from him. He sat alone at table 4, placed his phone face down, and ordered nothing but water. No wine lists, no appetizers, just water. People rarely noticed exhaustion on a stranger, but tonight it felt visible on him. A whole week of arguing with the board about AI ethics had carved something heavy across his shoulders. Sleepless nights, questions he couldn't answer cleanly, and the feeling that the company he built was losing its soul faster than he could save it. He slipped off his Patek Philippe, a watch valued more than a year of rent in this restaurant, and tucked it deep in his coat pocket. His wrist looked bare, almost defenseless. He didn't want symbols tonight. He didn't want the armor. He wanted to breathe. And that was when she appeared, carrying nothing dramatic, nothing theatrical, just a tray, a warm towel, and the kind of attention people usually save for someone they already love. "Good evening," she said gently, placing the towel beside his glass. "You look like you're carrying the whole world on your shoulders. Let me carry the water for you." Her voice wasn't pitying. It wasn't curious. It was simple, direct, and startlingly kind. Harrison looked up. She didn't see the wealth. She didn't see the hidden pressure, the articles, the titles, or the silent war inside him. She only saw someone tired, someone worn down, someone human. Rory Harper. He didn't know her name yet, but he felt something shift, like a door quietly clicking open and inside a dark hallway. She added a small dessert to the table. "This one's on me," she said. "No reason." Harrison noticed her before she even reached the table. The heels struck the floor with a confidence that belonged to someone who expected attention, not someone who earned it. Conversation dimmed slightly as she walked, a gold dress shimmering under the lights, posture straight, eyes sharp. She scanned the room as though she were choosing investment partners instead of looking for a date. Then she saw him. "Harrison?" she asked, stopping at the edge of the table. He stood out of habit, the way people stand in the boardrooms out of respect, even when the respect isn't mutual. "Yes, you must be Blaine." "That's right." She slid into the seat without waiting for him to pull out the chair. "I hope I didn't keep you long. Things ran behind today." She said it like her time was a currency, and he'd already spent too much of it. Rory passed by in the distance briefly, meeting Harrison's eyes. There was a softness in her glance, just enough to steady him for a second before the new energy at the table erased it. Blaine opened her clutch, took out her phone, checked a message, then finally looked at him. "So," she said, "let's get to it." To it. Not to know you, not tell me about yourself, just it. The evaluation. "What do you do?" she asked. There was no malice in the question, just calculation. He had met investors with warmer tones. "I work in tech," Harrison answered. He kept his voice neutral, controlled. "I run a company." "Which company?" "Taskflow." Her eyes widened. It was the first genuine reaction she'd had. "You're the Taskflow guy? The founder?" "Yes." "Wow." She leaned back, assessing him completely differently now. "You must have an insane 5-year plan. Expansion, public infrastructure contracts, AI, logistics. Everyone's talking about it. What's your angle?" He swallowed. This was the test he had set for himself. To tell the truth. Not the investor-approved truth. Not the magazine-trimmed truth, but the one he hadn't voiced out loud to anyone outside the board. "I'm thinking about scaling down," he said quietly. She blinked. "Scaling what down?" "My life," he said, "not the company, just me." The confusion on her face tightened into something sharper. "I'm considering a slower life." She shut her menu hard. "I didn't come here for someone looking to run from ambition," she said. "I came here because I thought you were the man who built Taskflow. I thought you wanted to own the city, or at least part of it." Her disappointment wasn't quiet. It was sharp, deliberate, and carried like a blade wrapped in perfume. "I spent an hour getting ready for this, Harrison," Blaine continued. "If I wanted to date someone with a fisherman retirement fantasy, I would have swiped left." Harrison said nothing. Not because he didn't have words, but because the words inside him were built for boardrooms, not this table. She stood. "Look," she said, smoothing her dress. "You seem like a nice guy, but you and I are not aligned. I'm chasing something worth building. You're chasing silence." She didn't wait for him to answer. She turned, lifted her chin, and walked away, gliding through the room with the confidence of someone who believes she'd made the smartest exit of the night. Rory caught the moment from across the floor. Her eyes softened for a breath, just a breath, before she moved on, carrying a tray. Harrison sat down again slowly. It wasn't heartbreak. It wasn't even rejection. It was the feeling of being misread so deeply that it scraped something inside him. He'd spent months asking himself if the life he'd built meant anything anymore. And tonight made the question louder. The date ended before it began. The performance review of his soul was over. And somewhere between the echo of her heels and the weight settling across his chest, he realized something. Rory had understood more about him in 10 seconds than Blaine had in 10 minutes. And the night was far from over. The restaurant didn't slow down after Blaine left. It never did. The Obsidian ran like a perfectly timed machine. Each table turned with efficiency. Each guest treated like a small investment in reputation. But at table 4, everything felt heavier. Harrison stayed seated, hands resting on the edges of the untouched water glass. For a long moment, he didn't even blink. He just listened. Not to the piano, not to the soft conversations, but to the faint echo of Blaine's last words. "You're chasing silence." He exhaled. In a way, she wasn't wrong, but she also hadn't understood what kind of noise he was trying to escape in the first place. A shadow interrupted the dim gold light across the table. It was the manager. Suit crisp, expression polite but tight. Someone who knew the cost of every seat and every minute it stayed empty. "Sir," he said, "I hope your evening has been manageable." The pause before the last word was too deliberate. "It's fine," Harrison replied. "Of course. I do want to mention," the manager glanced at the untouched bread, the water, the minimal footprint of his presence, "that we have a wait list tonight, and our policy requires guests to order a main course to keep premium tables." There it was, the subtle request to leave without asking him to leave. Harrison opened his mouth, unsure what he would say, but he never got the chance. "Daniel." Rory's voice slid gently but firmly into the space between them. She stepped forward with a coffee pot in hand, brows drawn just enough to signal she had heard every word. "He's still deciding," she said, "and he's a guest." Daniel forced a polite smile. "Rory, I understand, but we have enough tables turning tonight. Let him sit a little longer." For a split second, the manager's jaw tightened. Then he nodded curtly and walked away, the tension trailing behind him like a coattail. Rory sighed quietly before turning back to Harrison. "You don't have to explain anything," she said, pouring fresh coffee into the empty cup in front of him. "People come here for all kinds of reasons. Some celebrate, some grieve." "Do you believe her?" she asked gently. He swallowed. Tonight, it feels like she was right. Rory pulled the empty chair back, not to sit, but to lean on it, grounding her presence at his level. "Harrison," she said, her tone lowering, steadying, becoming something that felt almost like truth being prepared before delivery. "Don't ever confuse your net worth with your worth as a human being." He lifted his eyes. She wasn't finished. "Some people are so poor," she continued. "All they have is money. They walk into a room and see price tags, not people. And the moment you don't fit the future they designed for you, they replace you like a bad investment." Her voice softened. "She didn't leave because you lacked something. She left because she couldn't recognize value unless it came wrapped in ambition and noise." Silence fell between them. Not heavy, clean, like someone had opened a window in a room he didn't realize was suffocating. Rory straightened slightly, her expression warm but grounded. "You sat here with nothing but a glass of water and your own honesty," she said. "That takes more courage than most people give credit for." He felt the words land, not as comfort, but as clarity. For the first time all night, he felt seen. "Thank you," Harrison said quietly. And this time the words meant something deeper than politeness. Rory smiled. Not big, not dramatic, just enough to shift the air. "Eat the dessert before it melts," she said. "Small things help more than people think." She moved away, back into the rhythm of the restaurant, leaving him with warm coffee and her words echoing in the space she had just filled. "Your worth as a human being is not the same thing as your net worth." The sentence settled inside him like a truth he had been avoiding, a truth he needed a stranger to say out loud. And somewhere between the sting of rejection, Harrison didn't plan to return to the Obsidian. But 2 nights later, his feet carried him back before his mind could argue. Not because of the date, not because of the humiliation. and definitely not because he wanted to be seen. He returned because of one sentence spoken by a woman who had no idea who he really was. Don't confuse your net worth with your worth as a human being. That line had been replaying in his head like a song stuck on loop. Unexpected, disruptive, but impossible to ignore. Tonight he didn't wear the watch, didn't style his hair, didn't choose a jacket meant to signal anything. He walked in as quietly as possible, the way people walk into libraries or churches, places where they aren't sure what they're searching for, only that something inside feels still for the first time in a long time. Rory spotted him before he made it to table 4. She blinked in surprise. Not the kind that demanded explanation, but the kind that acknowledged an unspoken truth. He had come back for something other than food. "You're early this time," she said, approaching with a soft grin. "I figured the water would need time to settle." The joke came out awkward, but her smile widened anyway. "Well," she said, placing a fresh glass down, "tonight it's on me again." He sat. There was no boardroom posture tonight, no shoulders squared to face investors or critics. He leaned forward slightly, elbows near the edge of the table, like he wanted to make the moment smaller, more grounded. Rory didn't rush away this time. She set the menu down but didn't open it. "How was your week?" she asked. He hesitated. People usually asked him that with an agenda, waiting for the perfect moment to slip in a proposal, an idea, a favor. But she meant it literally. "It was loud," he admitted. "Meetings, arguments, more meetings. A lot of people asking what direction I want to take everything." "And do you know?" "I thought I did," he said, "but I'm reevaluating." Rory nodded as if that made perfect sense. Sometimes reevaluating is the bravest thing someone can do, especially if everyone around them is afraid of what the answer might be. The words hit deeper than she realized. He watched her for a moment, the way she checked the room instinctively, the way she balanced warmth with caution, the way servers often do in high-pressure restaurants. There was something sharp about her, something soft, too, a combination that felt lived, not performed. "You must see a lot working here," he said. "Enough to know who's pretending and who's tired," she replied. "And which am I?" She took a second before answering. "Tired," she said, "but not pretending." Something in him loosened. The group at another table waved her down with impatience. Rory breathed in slowly, then let it out with a practiced calm. "Duty calls," she said. "I'll come check on you in a bit." She walked away, threading effortlessly between tables. Harrison watched her go, conflicted by how easy this connection felt in contrast to the relationships built around him for years. Relationships full of numbers, deadlines, and obligations. For once, someone wasn't asking for anything. She was simply there. 10 minutes later, she returned with a small plate. "You didn't order this," he said. "I know," she replied, "but you look like someone who forgets to eat when he's thinking too much." He laughed under his breath. "Is it that obvious?" "Crystal clear." He took a bite. It wasn't the dessert that made him pause. It was the way she waited, not hovering, not evaluating, just present. "How long have you worked here?" he asked. 3 years, Roy said. This time she didn't walk away quickly. She gave him a small nod, real grounding, then left him with half a dessert, warm water, and a new truth forming in the silence. He wasn't coming back for the restaurant. He wasn't coming back for the date that failed. He was coming back because, for the first time in years, someone saw the man behind the empire he built. And she didn't look away. The next time Harrison returned, it wasn't planned. It wasn't even logical. He had meetings stacked from morning to evening, an inbox flashing with concerns from investors, and a board presentation he should have been rehearsing. But as the day faded into night, his mind drifted back to the obsidian, back to the warm towel, the quiet compassion, the way Rory had spoken to him like a person instead of a headline. He found himself standing outside the restaurant before he could name the reason why. Inside, Rory was refilling glasses at table 6. She looked up, surprised, then smiled the way people smile when something familiar returns unexpectedly. "You again?" she said softly as she approached. "Should I start keeping your favorite seat open?" He huffed a quiet laugh and took his usual spot at table 4. "Only if there's a loyalty card." She placed a glass of water in front of him. No questions asked. Tonight the restaurant hummed with low, warm noise, soft lighting, clinking forks, conversations floating around him. But none of it cut through the space between them. "You look tired," she said. "I am. Long day, long year," he answered honestly. Rory nodded as if she understood exactly what that meant. She didn't ask for details. She didn't fill the silence. She let him settle. That alone made him stay. A few minutes later, when she returned with a pot of coffee, he noticed something different in her posture. Something slightly heavier. "You okay?" he asked. "Just another shift," she said, brushing it off. But the way she exhaled told the rest of the story. He tilted his head. "That's not an answer." She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "I picked up extra delivery jobs today. I work for Task Flow on the side." Her eyes flickered, tired. It used to be manageable. Harrison's chest tightened, though he kept his expression neutral. Task Flow, his company, his creation. But she didn't know that. "What happened?" he asked quietly. Rory pulled a chair halfway out and leaned on it like she needed something steady beneath her hand. "They changed the payout rules," she said. "Rates shifted overnight. No warning, no explanation. I did 3 deliveries and earned less than half of what I used to." He swallowed. He knew the adjustment she was talking about. He'd read the report, approved its testing phase. His board claimed it would optimize efficiency. No one mentioned people. "I'm sorry," he said. She shook her head. "It's not your fault." She didn't know the truth. Not yet. "I keep telling myself it's temporary," she continued. "But every week it gets harder. More deductions, more penalties, more unpredictable numbers. It makes you feel like you're a variable in a system, not a person." Her words hit him in places his boardroom logic never touched. He had heard analysts describe TaskFlow as innovative, streamlined, scalable. He'd never heard someone describe it as something that wore them down. "And yet you still keep going?" he asked softly. "I have to," Rory said. "Leo's treatments, the rent, everything piles up. You don't get to quit when someone depends on you." A small silence settled, gentle but heavy. She wasn't complaining, she wasn't criticizing. She was telling the truth because it needed to be said out loud somewhere. "You deserve better," he said. "I know." She straightened slightly, offering him a tired smile. "Does it mean life listens?" She walked away to tend another table. Harrison sat motionless, staring at the untouched coffee. When Rory returned, he looked at her with a steadiness she didn't fully understand yet. "You deserve transparency," he said. "Fairness, predictability." "It would be nice," she replied, "but apps don't care how we feel. They only care about the math." She moved away again with her tray, unaware that the man she had just spoken to was the one who designed the math she was fighting. Harrison leaned back in his chair, breathing slowly. There are moments in a person's life when the truth arrives not as a headline, not as an accusation, but as a human story spoken quietly across a table. And there are truths that change a man in ways even he didn't anticipate. Tonight, Harrison Sterling discovered that the company he built, the company he believed had changed the world, had also been quietly hurting the woman who had shown him more kindness than anyone in years. And the realization cut deeper than anything Blaine had said. This wasn't about ambition or image or legacy. This was about responsibility. Something fundamental inside him shifted. And he knew, deeply, irrevocably, that nothing about his relationship with TaskFlow would ever be the same after tonight. The shift had barely started when Rory received the call. Harrison wasn't at the Obsidian yet. He had promised himself he wouldn't return tonight. He needed distance, needed to think, but old habits and new emotions pulled him back to the restaurant's warm lights like a tide. He walked in just as the dinner rush began. The room buzzed with polished conversations and clinking glasses, but his eyes went straight to the one person who grounded him, Rory. She was tying her apron at the service station. Her phone buzzed once, then again, and then she froze, the kind of stillness that doesn't belong in a busy restaurant. Harrison watched her fumble for the phone, eyes scanning the screen. The color drained from her face. She whispered a name so soft he could barely read her lips. "Leo!" Her hands trembled as she pressed the phone against her ear. "Yes, wait, slow down. What happened?" Her voice cracked. She turned away from the dining room, holding onto the counter like she needed the wood to keep her standing. Harrison stepped closer without thinking. Not enough to intrude, just close enough to hear the pieces. "Another seizure. Is he breathing now?" I'm coming, right now." "Rory," Harrison said softly. She didn't hear him, couldn't. Her world had narrowed to one person, her brother. She headed for the exit, but before she reached the door, a firm voice stopped her. "Rory." It was the manager. She turned, breathless. "Daniel, Leo's in the ER. I have to go." Daniel crossed his arms. "Your shift started 20 minutes ago." "My brother's in the hospital," she repeated, voice breaking. He could be... I'm sorry, Daniel interrupted, but we have policy. You walk out now, you lose tonight's shift. And if you leave early again after last week's attendance note, we'll have to terminate. She stared at him like she didn't understand the language he was speaking. Terminate? She whispered. For going to the hospital? Rory, I don't make the rules, Daniel said, tightening his jaw. The HR system flags every absence. It's automated. Harrison stiffened. Automated. He knew exactly which system the manager was referring to. His system, Task Flow's HR suite, the one designed to track efficiency, attendance, labor consistency. He felt something inside him buckle. Rory's voice trembled. Please, just tonight, I'll work doubles all week. It's out of my hands, Daniel said coldly. The app already logged you as a no-show. If you walk out that door, it confirms it. She pressed a hand over her mouth, fighting tears, not from sadness, but from the cruelty of timing. I can't lose this job. Then stay, Daniel replied. This time a tear slipped down her cheek. But if I stay, I could lose him. The dining room kept moving around them, unaware, unaffected. People laughed over wine. Cutlery chimed. A birthday candle flickered in the corner. And in the middle of that polished, heartless rhythm stood a woman breaking in silence. Harrison stepped forward. Daniel, he said, his voice is steady. Let her go. The manager turned sharply. Sir, this is a staffing matter. She's responding to an emergency. And you are? Someone telling you she deserves compassion. Daniel shook his head, dismissive. This restaurant runs on structure, not feelings. Rory wiped her cheek and swallowed hard. I can defend myself. It's okay. No, Harrison said gentler now. You shouldn't have to. But Rory gasped. Daniel, please don't do this right now. It's not personal, the manager said coldly. It's policy. He pressed confirm. The tiny sound of the click felt louder than a slammed door. Rory staggered back as if struck. Her apron slipped from her fingers and fell to the floor. I'm fired, she whispered. Daniel didn't look up. The system logged it. You can collect your last check on Friday. She covered her face with both hands, shoulders shaking. Harrison's chest burned. He had seen numbers go red, markets collapse, algorithms malfunction. But he had never watched his own creation crush a human being in real time. He stepped between them, voice low and dangerous. You made the wrong decision. Daniel scoffed. Sir, unless you're planning to order something. The conversation cut off as Rory stumbled toward the exit. She walked like someone trying not to fall apart in public. Quick steps, choked breaths, arms wrapped tightly around herself. Harrison followed her outside. Cold air hit them both. Rory, wait, he said, reaching out but stopping himself inches from her arm. She turned, tears streaked down her face. I don't have time, she cried. I have to get to the hospital. I'll drive you, he said without hesitation. She shook her head. You don't even know me. I know enough, he answered. I know you shouldn't be going through this alone. Her breath hitched, but she didn't argue. She simply nodded, small, exhausted, trusting him in the way people trust anyone who shows up in their darkest moment. Harrison led her to the curb, hand hovering protectively at her back, not touching, but close enough to steady her steps. As he opened the car door for her, he caught one last reflection in the restaurant glass. A man who built a system that just fired the woman who saved him from drowning in his own life. And something inside him broke in a way he knew he would never ignore again. Rory didn't return to the Obsidian for 3 days. Her world had collapsed into hospital hallways, insurance forms, and the constant beep-beep rhythm of machines surrounding her brother's bed. Leo was stable but fragile, drifting in and out of consciousness. She barely slept, barely spoke, barely held herself together. Through it all, Harrison stayed close, quiet, steady, never overstepping. He drove her to the hospital. He waited outside exam rooms. He bought food she barely touched. He sat with her in silence when words were useless. He didn't try to solve the pain. He simply refused to let her face it alone. And when Leo finally opened his eyes fully, whispering her name with a shaky smile, Rory cried into the sleeve of her hoodie, relief washing over her like a collapsed wave. But real life wasn't kind enough to pause. Bills waited, rent waited. The fact she'd been fired waited. On the 4th evening, with Leo resting and the doctors assuring her things were stable, Rory did something she dreaded. She returned to the restaurant to pick up her final paycheck. She walked in wearing the same clothes she'd worn at the hospital. Thin sweater, jeans, hair loosely tied. She looked smaller somehow, like the last few days had stolen something from her. Harrison offered to come inside, but she shook her head. "It's my mess," she whispered. "You've already done too much." He waited in the car, restless, watching her through the glass doors like a man bracing for an impact he couldn't control. Inside, the restaurant moved with its usual polished rhythm: clean tables, warm lights, crisp uniforms. No one seemed to notice when Rory stepped in, clutching the strap of her bag like a lifeline. Daniel, the manager, finally looked up when she approached the counter. "Oh," he said, expression stiff. "You're here for your check." She nodded. "Yes, I just need it. I won't take long." He disappeared into the back room. While she waited, Rory bent to pick up a dropped napkin from the floor. Out of habit. A worker's instinct that had outlived her contract. Her reflection caught in the silver panel of the bar counter. Eyes tired, shoulders hunched, she tried to breathe past the humiliation. That was when the restaurant door slammed open. Not violently, but with purpose. A team of 5 walked in, dressed in tailored suits, carrying briefcases in urgency. Their presence cut through the dining room like a cold wind. The hostess scrambled. "Can I help you?" "We're here for Mr. Sterling," the woman in front said. "He was supposed to sign the merger documents an hour ago." Roy looked up. The name froze her. "Sterling. No, it couldn't be. Mr. Sterling." The hostess repeated, "I don't believe—" "One moment." The lead attorney tapped her tablet. "His location tracker puts him at this address. He came here frequently this week." Murmurs rippled across the room. The Obsidian was not used to surprise visits from legal teams looking for billionaires. Daniel walked out with Rory's envelope in hand, irritation already forming on his face, until he saw the suits. "Can I help you?" he asked, straightening his tie. "We're looking for Mr. Harrison Sterling," the attorney said, "the CEO of TaskFlow." Her eyes glistened. "And what did you find out?" "That kindness sees deeper than wealth ever will." She looked down, clutching her paycheck envelope like a fragile truth. "Everything that happened, the firing, the algorithm hurting you, all of it came from something I built." His voice cracked. "I'm so sorry, Rory." A tear slid down her cheek. He stepped closer, carefully, giving her space to pull away. She didn't. Then he said, voice low but firm, "You shouldn't carry this burden alone. Not anymore." The room held its breath. Servers, guests, lawyers, even Daniel, standing frozen, awaiting the rest of his fate. And in the middle of it all, at table 4, the truth finally stood between them. Not as a wall, but as a beginning. The Obsidian slowly regained its rhythm after the legal team escorted Daniel out of the restaurant. But the air hadn't settled. It crackled with the kind of tension that comes when people realize they've misjudged a man sitting 2 tables away. Rory stood frozen near table 4, her paycheck envelope clutched against her chest like a bandage on a wound still bleeding. Harrison didn't move toward her immediately. He waited, giving her breath, giving her space, like someone approaching a fragile truth with both hands open. "You don't have to talk to me right now," he said softly, "but I need you to know I didn't mean for any of this to hurt you." She looked up as if she had been holding tears hostage. "You're the CEO," she whispered. "You run the company that fired me, the company that cut my pay on TaskFlow, the company that—" Her voice cracked. He inhaled deeply, the kind of breath a man takes before walking into a storm he created himself. "You're right," he said, "and that's exactly why I'm not here to make excuses." Rory's lips trembled. "Then what are you here to do?" Harrison turned to the attorneys behind him and held out his hand. One of them quickly offered a large leather folder. He placed it on table 4, the same table where he had sat as a nobody just nights before. "This," he said, tapping the folder gently, "is the merger the board has been waiting for me to sign." She blinked through tears, confused. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I'm not signing it," he said. "Not unless the company's ethics change first." The attorneys looked alarmed. "Sir, this will delay the deal." "Good," Harrison replied. "Maybe it's time something actually shook." He pushed the folder aside and focused on Rory, his voice lowering. "I built TaskFlow to help people," he said, "to make life easier, to give workers flexibility, income, stability. Somewhere along the way, the numbers got louder than the people." Rory swallowed. "And you're just realizing that now?" "No," he said quietly. "I ignored it. That's worse." The honesty hit her with the kind of force she wasn't prepared for. He wasn't defending himself. He wasn't hiding. He was owning it fully, painfully. "Rory," he continued, "the night you told me what TaskFlow was doing to you, I couldn't sleep. I had reports in front of me showing acceptable variance, market optimization, predicted churn. But none of those numbers showed your face or Leo's. Emotions swelled behind his voice, tightly controlled, but undeniably real. For the first time, I saw what the algorithm was doing to actual people, and it made me sick. Rory's breath shuddered. She had fought so long, so quietly, that hearing someone with power finally name the truth felt unreal. Harrison glanced at the attorneys again. Bring it. Another folder slid into his hand, this one smaller, simpler. He turned it toward her. This one is Aurora, he said, a program to rebuild task flow from the inside out. Rory stared at the cover. Her fingers twitched, hesitant to reach for it. What is it? She whispered. A commitment, he said, to transparency in pay, to fair scheduling, to human appeal overrides, to removing automated penalties, to giving workers an actual voice, not in marketing, but in policy. His voice steadied, firm but warm. I want you to help lead it. Her eyes widened, disbelief mixing with fear. Me? Yes. Harrison, I'm a server, a delivery worker. I don't have degrees in business or fancy titles. I don't need someone with titles, he said. I need someone who knows the pain up close. Her breath grew rapid. I can't fix a corporation. You don't have to, he said. You just have to help me fix its heart. Rory shook her head, overwhelmed. Why me? Because, he said gently, in a world obsessed with wealth and power, you're the first person in years who looked at me and cared about the human being, not the CEO. You told me truths nobody else had the courage to say. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. And because you stopped in the middle of your own struggle to bring me a warm towel and a bit of kindness. Her eyes filled again. I'm indignant, not from weakness, from recognition. You showed me what enough actually looks like, he whispered. The room quieted around them, servers pretending not to stare, guests frozen in the middle of their meals, the pianist pausing between songs. Harrison continued, I didn't reveal my identity because I needed to know who I was without the armor. Whether I was worth anything when I didn't walk into the room as the billionaire, the CEO, the man with the plan. He swallowed. You showed me I am. A single tear escaped down Rory's cheek. Harrison's voice broke slightly, but he didn't hide it. But here's what matters. You're fighting a battle nobody sees, shouldering more than anyone your age should carry, and you still stopped to take care of strangers. He placed the Aurora folder into her hands. I don't want to save you, he said softly. I'm asking you to help save the company I lost sight of. Silence, raw, charged, human. The attorney stepped back. The staff stood still. And at table 4, where a tired man once sat alone with a glass of water, 2 lives quietly shifted into alignment. Rory closed her fingers around the folder, trembling. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. I know you can, Harrison replied, and I'll walk every step of it with you. Her shoulders shook, not with fear, with the release of a weight she'd carried alone for too long. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to breathe. The world didn't change overnight, but 6 months later, it was impossible to deny that something in it had shifted. Especially at task flow, where once workers felt like invisible gears, now their pay reports came with plain language transparency. Penalties had been replaced with real appeals reviewed by real people. Delivery partners could see exactly how every dollar was calculated. Automated flags were no longer the final word. And for the first time in the company's history, workers, real workers, sat on the advisory panel for policy decisions. At the center of every meeting, every reform, every script rewrite stood one name. Rory Harper, consultant, Aurora Project. Not a token, not a mascot, a force of lived truth. She entered rooms quietly and changed everything inside them. And beside her, sometimes in the same room, sometimes guiding from afar, was Harrison Sterling. No longer the man carrying the world alone, no longer hiding behind titles or watches. He walked lighter now, freer, like a man who had chosen enough and meant it. The obsidian still kept the memory of table 4, the tired man, the warm towel, the quiet kindness that rewrote entire systems. But tonight, their world intersected far from the restaurant, inside an upscale art gallery in downtown Chicago. A charity exhibition called Shape of Work, Stories of Real Hands, had dedicated a central piece to the Aurora Project. Photos of couriers, servers, gig workers, portraits powerful in their simplicity, lined the walls. Captions told the story of what work felt like, not just what it paid. Rory walked slowly through the gallery, taking in each image as if they were chapters of a book she had helped write. She had never been to a gallery opening before. She wore a simple black dress, not expensive, not flashy, the kind that didn't try to be anything except comfortable. Her hair was loosely tied, a few strands falling near her cheek. Beside her, Harrison looked almost unrecognizable from the man who once slouched at table 4. Not in a superficial way, but in the way he held his shoulders now, not weighed down. In the way he looked at people, not past them. In the way he walked, not to outrun mistakes, but to stand with what mattered. They stopped when a familiar voice drifted through the hum of guests. "Oh my God, Harrison." Rory turned. Harrison did too. It was Blaine, too. Her heels clicked the same confident rhythm. Her smile calculated the same way as months before. But something in her eyes flickered when she saw who he was standing next to. She approached with a soft, rehearsed laugh. "I can't believe it's really you," she said. "I didn't think billionaires showed up at public events unless there were cameras." Harrison lifted an eyebrow. "Nice to see you too." "And you?" Blaine turned to Rory, scanning her with the same appraising look she'd once used on him. Rory offered a polite smile, nothing more. Before she could introduce herself, Blaine leaned closer to Harrison, lowering her voice. "I've been following you in the news, the reforms, Aurora Project. It's all incredible." She touched his arm lightly. "I'm impressed. And I don't get impressed easily." Rory stepped slightly back, not offended, just giving him room to choose who he wanted to be. Harrison looked at Blaine for a long second. Then the moment unfolded with calm clarity. "You know," he said, "there was a time when I thought validation had to come from people chasing the same ladder I was climbing." Blaine smiled, flipping her hair. "Well, we all look for people on our level." "That's the thing," Harrison said. "I'm not climbing anymore." Her smile faltered. He continued. "And when you walked out of the Obsidian that night, I thought you were rejecting me because you saw something lacking." He shook his head lightly. "But you were rejecting me because you couldn't see beyond the surface." Blaine blinked, tightening her grip on her clutch. "I didn't mean—" He raised a gentle hand. "You were honest, and that helped me see what I didn't want to become." He stepped slightly aside, revealing Rory at his right. "This," Harrison said, "is Rory Harper, the person who helped me rebuild a company and myself." Rory's cheeks warmed. She looked away briefly. Blaine's mouth parted, then closed again. There was no cruelty, no gloating, just truth delivered calmly. "You're looking for a portfolio," Harrison said softly. "I'm looking for a partner." He didn't need to explain who he meant. The clarity in his eyes said everything. Blaine stepped back a little, her confidence wavering for the first time. She opened her mouth, searching for something to say. But Harrison already turned to Rory, fully, intentionally. Rory inhaled slowly, steadying the flutter in her chest. "You didn't have to say all that," she whispered. "I did," he replied, "because you deserve to hear it, and because it's true." A curator passed behind them, adjusting lights toward a large print on the far wall, a photograph of a courier holding a backpack. Under it, a quote, "Work should not break the people who carry it. Rory Harper." She hadn't known her words would be used. Her eyes widened slightly. "You said that during our first Aurora meeting," Harrison murmured. "It stayed with me." Emotion flickered in her gaze, gentle and deep. People moved around them, admiring the photos, sipping wine, discussing change as though it were an exhibit itself. But in the middle of the gallery, the world felt quiet, just for them. "You know," Rory said, her voice soft but sure, "when we met, I thought you were someone trying to disappear." Harrison smiled. "I was. And now? Now I'd rather build something worth staying for." Her breath caught lightly. Then without urgency, without theatrics, he reached out his hand, not grabbing, not demanding, just offering. Rory looked at it for a moment before intertwining her fingers with his. A simple gesture, but one that carried months of unspoken truths. They walked toward the exit together, passing beneath the final exhibit, a billboard mock-up of Task Flow with its new promise printed boldly, "Human First." Outside, the Chicago night stretched ahead of them. Cool air, soft streetlights, the quiet movement of a city still learning how to be kinder. Rory leaned slightly into Harrison's side. He steadied her with a hand at her back, gentle, certain. For the first time in a long time, both of them were walking toward a future not built on fear or exhaustion, but on choice, on truth, on enough. In the quiet glow of the Obsidian restaurant, Harrison Sterling discovered a truth more valuable than any fortune. Kindness sees the soul when the world only sees the surface. A blind date dismissed him for choosing peace over power, Yet a weary waitress, carrying her own invisible burdens, offered him something priceless: unconditional understanding and a reminder that our worth is never measured by wealth, titles, or ambition. Rory's gentle words, "Don't ever confuse your net worth with your worth as a human being," pierced through years of noise and pressure, awakening Harrison to the humanity he had almost lost. This story whispers to us all, in a world obsessed with more, the bravest act is to choose enough, to see others deeply, and to let compassion rewrite the rules we live by. Sometimes the richest moments come not from what we achieve, but from who we choose to become when no one is watching. What small act of kindness changed your perspective forever? Share your story in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this touched your heart, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that reminds us what really matters. Thank you for being here.